with the rise of DataOps and SQL on top of Redis. This is me. My name's Andrew Stevenson, and I'm the CTO at Lenses.io. My background basically always been about data, always been about real-time data, from data warehousing, big data, fast data, clearing and settlement, high-frequency trading, so very high volumes, very intense speeds, investment banking, also a lot in the energy markets as well. And I live in the Netherlands, and we are hiring. This is where we currently are located at the moment, so we have people in London, we have a lot of people in Greece, in Spain, also in Poland and Germany. Myself, I am British, but I am in the Netherlands. And because I'm British, I want to talk about Brexit. Yay! No? Nobody want to talk about Brexit? Nobody else does either. So no, we're not going to talk about Brexit. We're going to talk about DevOps to DataOps, and then SQL on top of Redis. It's not a deep dive into our SQL engine because it's not long enough in this talk. So DevOps, right? You probably all know what DevOps is. I don't need to teach you how to suck eggs, right? But what I want to do is just do a brief overview of what it is and how it differentiates then between DataOps. So DevOps, right, it's tech focused. We have developers, we have operations coming together to produce artifacts, to reduce the development cycle time so we can push out shippable artifacts quicker, but we're pushing out artifacts, we're pushing out Dockers, we're pushing out jar files, we're pushing out binaries, whatever we're compiling it in, doesn't matter. So it's very, very, very tech focused. If we go over and we look at DataOps, it's at a high level. So we had Thomas this morning from Google talking about the higher level something is, the higher the abstraction, the more value you're adding. We all work in companies that are all trying to be data driven, right? Every company I've worked in, whether you call it digital transformation, big data platforms, everyone's at it. We have data scientists, we have data engineers, we have data warehouses, we have business analysts. The main protagonist here is data. So that we shift the focus away from the technology and onto the data, because that's what's actually bringing us the value. So at Lenses, what we look at is we look at three pillars around DataOps. We have streaming flows. So think of streaming flows as the processing. So this morning they were talking about Redis gears, right? You want to do real-time streaming, you want to do processing on the data as it's flowing through your system. So that's one aspect of it. We also have data governance, right? You need to have some data ethics around what you're doing. There's been some high-profile cases in the news about data ethics and what people are doing with it. So you need to have control over your data, auditing, security as well. And you also have data visibility. How are all these data gurus going to get access to your data? My personal experience in investment banking, 50 Scala developers delivering projects late and an army of BAs who can't get access to the data. And these are the guys who know the data and who eventually have to sign it off. What does a data platform look like? You've already probably seen all of this before. Various different ways of describing this diagram. We have the sources, lots of different sources, especially if you're working in finance, maybe even dreaded XML files, right? But you need to get that into your target system. Maybe it's the polyglot or the multimodal they're talking about this morning. You have various different things in there, key values, stores, maybe HDFS. Then you also need some transport layer to integrate it, to act as a buffer and to be able to route the data to where you want it. Something like Redis streams maybe, or Kafka, or Pulsar, right? Then you also need some way to do processing on top of it. Then you also need some way to actually deploy those processing and somewhere to deploy it to, maybe Kubernetes. And you also then need a way to actually give your users visibility and to do the monitoring on top as well. So this is typically what a data platform looks like, right? You know, swap out the various different components, whatever your favorite Apache project is. You end up with pretty much that picture. So what we're doing at Lenses.io is trying to abstract a lot of that away. So we allow you to do get the visibility, to deploy the flows, to do all the operations, but also do the security and auditing as well. Right? That's very, very important nowadays. And we also have data policies in there. So this is what our platform generally looks like. And this allows anybody who's data literate to get at your data and contribute to being data driven. So if we zoom out a bit, you can have a platform like this, right? But because you're at Redis conference, you're probably not that interested in Kafka. After all, Redis streams is 500 times faster than Kafka. You could also do this. Put it on top of Redis. We actually don't really care if you run on Redis, if you run on Kafka. Maybe you want to run on Pulsar. Maybe you just want to do it on JMS. We're not interested. We're interested at the application layer. That's the bit that adds you value. I can go to all the cloud providers now. I can spin up Kafka at the click of a button. I can spin up Kubernetes at the click of the button. It's not interesting, to be honest. You know, I remember once in my career going to the head of fixed income trading and said, oh, look how fast I can spin up this Hadoop cluster. He's not interested. What he's interested in is actually his application layer, the bit that makes the money. So maybe you want to start on Kafka, maybe you want to go to Redis, maybe you see some use in Pulsar, right? Write your application layer once, go across them all. This is what we call an overlay technology. So, how do we do the data visibility, which is what I'm going to talk about now is, well, yeah, we do it via SQL. Why do we use SQL? It's everywhere. Everyone knows SQL from, you know, I've even had receptionists do SQL all the way through to traders. Developers know how to do SQL, although they're often the worst people at actually writing SQL. We have NoSQL, we have SQL on Hadoop. We now have SQL on streams. And remember, a lot of your big data or fast data people who are working on your data pipelines probably come from your data warehousing or BI team. And what do they know? They know SQL. But yeah, right, you can't do everything with SQL. We're not saying you can. You're not going to do machine learning with SQL, right? That's for sure. But you can do a lot. I've done a lot. Real-time trade, reconciliation, value at risk, huge trade analytics, all sorts of stuff is done via SQL. Even all the machine learning models that I've seen run for an energy company, how did they load the data? They fired a SQL statement to load the data in. Now imagine if they can actually fire a SQL statement on top of a stream rather than waiting until it hits their Hadoop stack, right? I don't need that Hadoop stack anymore. I can just fire a SQL and load my model continually. So in Lenses, we have a SQL engine. This is our own SQL engine that we built, and we have different ways that you can actually query the data. We have a table query. We have a continuous query. We also have SQL processes, so think of Redis gears. We also have the Connect query engine. It's not really part of our SQL engine. This is one of the open source components we have, for example, to take data out of Kafka and write it into Redis. It also has a SQL layer in there, but we're going to revamp that. But the table query and the continuous query, they're all pluggable, right? So we have it on top of Kafka. Now we've written a plugin to do it on top of Redis. So let's have a look at a bit more detail of what I actually mean here. So all these streaming systems, doesn't matter which one it is, they all work as basically a log, right? They're writing events and events get appended in. And all of them, including Redis streams, they all have an identifier. The messages have an identifier. With Redis streams, it's timestamp in a sequence number. Kafka has offset plus the partition, make it unique. They also have a timestamp in there as well. Pulsar has a similar concept. So in this example, I've just said, okay, just numbered them, given the sequence number going all the way in. But we also have payloads in there. Now, I want to put messages in here. I'm simulating trades. If it was on Kafka, I'd have Avro. I'd be putting it in, and I have a schema. And I could be having a field called currency. With Redis streams, I could also have a field called currency. Now, let's say I want to actually pull out all the trades for GBP, because I'm interested in what's going to happen when Brexit finally, if it ever happens, right? So if I do it with a table query, I'm going to fire a query at a point in time after event 5 has come in. And what's going to happen is I'm only going to pull out from whatever's in that stream at that point in time, I'm going to pull them out matching my query. So if I do this query, select event ID from trades, where currency equals GBP, I'm only going to pull back events 1, 3, and 5. Standard like you get in a relational database. Also very easy for business people to work out. Hook that into Excel. Off you go. Your compliance people might not be very happy with you using Excel, but that's a different story. Now, if I run it as a continuous query, that's slightly different. I'm only going to get new events that match the predicates or whatever query I put in coming out, and it's not going to stop, right? When does the stream stop? It never stops. It's unbound. It's just going to go on and on and on. So if we use the continuous query, and it's an API, it's just all an API behind the scenes in Lenses, you're never going to stop. It's a WebSocket, and you're just going to get the results coming and coming and coming. So what do we support? Pretty much everything you can expect. We have aggregates, so average, min, max, count, sum. We have functions, all the standard functions, date functions, math functions, string functions, geospatial functions, I think are in there now as well. And we also support user-defined functions. So maybe you could do some machine learning by writing your own JavaScript or your own Scala class and making it available. It's up to you. We also support the joins as well. Joins are a bit tricky as well on streaming data because you always have to have a window which you're going to do the join into as well. We also have predicates, so on the where clause, right, you can filter there as well. Also on the having, if you're going to filter on the result of a grouping. And we also support predicate push downs, right, because if you want to look for, let's say, trades in a specific timestamp, right, we can actually then ask Redis to help us. We can ask Kafka to help us. Remember, there's no indexing in Kafka or Redis as such, although we are working on that. So if you do a query on something that's not on the key effectively, it's like a full table scan on the database. We are working on that to fix that. It should be coming pretty soon. And we also do complex types. Not so much in Redis, but if you're on the Kafka side or the poster side, you may have an Avro schema that may be massively nested. So you have arrays, structs, maps, etc. And we fully support that as well. We also have different client libraries, Golang, Python, Redux as well, fully supported as well. So you can actually, certainly with a Golang client, there's a CLI. So how do you promote your flows from one environment to another, your application topology? So this is where the client libraries come in. So if we have a look and we compare the table query to what's actually happening in the Lenses SQL, right? At the top, this would be what you would class as a table query in Redis. You do an X range, your stream, and then 2 timestamps. And below it, then we have what it would look like if you're doing it via SQL. Notice the underscore metadata. This is to access the underlying metadata of the system. So the same would apply on Kafka or Apache Pulsar. And then we have the same for the continuous queries. So in my mind, doing select star from stream is a lot easier than going X-ray block 0 streams, my stream $. Give that to a trader on a trading desk. Yeah, you're not going to be able to do that from Excel. So what's actually happening, right, is that Lenses itself, it's written in Scala and Kotlin. We're big fans of Kotlin, so if you want to join and write Kotlin, that's awesome. So it's a lot of APIs, right, effectively. So you can hit the API, first will authenticate you, then will authorize you. Are you allowed to see that data? Not only are you allowed to see that data, are you allowed to spin up a processor or anything else that may consume that data? So we have a set of blacklisting and whitelisting and a whole load of security models around that to make sure that you can actually do it. Then when the request comes in, we actually run it through our parser. We'll generate the plan, and then we actually spin up an Akka streams flow behind the scenes, because we're all big on Scala and Akka. So basically spins up the Akka stream flow, which is translated from the SQL. Then that will hit whatever target system we're speaking to, in this case Redis, and then it will start streaming the data back to the client. That client could be the Lenses UI, it could be whatever, it doesn't matter. But what we also do there is we apply these data policies. Let's say that's credit card data coming back, right? Do you want to expose all the credit card data? No, so we can actually apply data policies on that and start masking it and applying redaction as we come out. So when you come through lenses, you get all the authentication, you get the authorization, plus we're adding the data governance aspect on it. We even audit these queries. So we have a lot of insurance companies in Switzerland, and they actually want, every time you fire that query, we want to know about it. So we also audit that. It goes actually into the backing store, which could be Redis streams. You can write another query on that and pull it out and do your compliance reporting. We also have SQL processes. So this is like the Redis gears. So at the moment, it only works on Kafka Stream. It is coming across everything else soon, like very, very soon. Like we don't care, like say we don't care if you're on Kafka, if you're on Pulsar, or if you're on JMS, or even on NATS in Kubernetes, doesn't matter. So these are for actually doing the T and the ETL work, right? So at the moment, we also deploy them for you, so we can deploy them either inside Lenses itself, that's mainly for dev, or we can actually push it out to Kafka Connect workers, or we can push it out into Kubernetes and monitor it and scale it up and down for if you want to. Like say, Redis is coming pretty soon. And another interesting thing about this is SQL's config, right? And if I've got a Docker that runs the SQL runners that we have, plus my config, right? It's one Docker, which I can run multiple times to do the same thing. Config is code. And especially when I get into Kubernetes, I can deploy my entire landscape and version control it. So you get in the realm of GitOps as well. Another interesting subject. So that's my last slide, and I'm going to do a quick demo. If I can, let me check and see if my Docker is still up. That's a bit better. This is Lenses. At the moment, like I say, it's heavily focused towards Kafka, but it is what it is. We're going to sort all that out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our SQL editor, and I'm going to create a connection to Redis that we have running. So create a connection to Redis. That's created. Now let's use this connection and see what we've got in there. Use Redis, show tables. Right, so I've got two streams in there at the moment. Now they could be writing messages in at the moment. They don't actually onto my Docker because it can't handle it, my old computer. But let's just put a more realistic query in there that somebody on a trading desk might do. They've got trades flowing in. They want to join from trades onto exchanges, and then they want to aggregate all off across the bid, the ask, and they want to sum up all the quantity. Typical sort of query I used to do all the time. Hopefully, there we go. Maybe if I can zoom in a bit on that. It's on Redis. I'm going to do a demo of this tomorrow in the keynote speech with the live queries. I don't actually have it running here, but I'm going to flip over to another instance that we have. If it's still up. Yes. This is actually our topology because we can actually see what you're doing, right? So data operations, I can see my entire flow of everything that's going on. Certainly, you can ask questions about GDPR. Where's all my sensitive data going? But that's not what I'm here to show you. What I'm going to do is, because this has the data policies loaded into it, so we have a data policy here that's credit cards. So we're looking for all fields across the entire system that have credit card in it. We found some, or various different types of credit cards, so credit card underscored, credit card ID, because they'll be named differently in data sense. Then we can see all the topics or streams that we have them, and then all the applications that are running them. So if I go in here, then this is doing a query. This is the same query as before. Hopefully it comes back with a network. There we go. And we can see we've applied redaction on the credit card ID. We can also do that via the live stream. So if I come back out a bit, hopefully this is coming through. So this is the live stream like tailing the file, effectively. So this is the xread 0 block something or other. And again, we're redacting it. And there we go. That is basically lenses applying DataOps on top of streaming with SQL so everyone can do it, right? Like I say, I've worked in projects that got delayed because all my big data experts didn't know the data. And all those Oracle DBA guys did, or the data analysts did, but they can't get access to the data. And if we bring it up at a higher level, we can build out flows and get into production sooner. If you're not in production, it doesn't count, right? So how do you get into production? There we go. I'm done. Questions?
Hi. It's a very interesting concept.
Yeah.
So how do I know the schema, like when I'm trying to...
In Redis, you don't. So we're looking actually for something to be added to Redis to handle schema support. If you're in Kafka, there's a thing called a schema registry where you can see schemas. Let's pick something. We can see the schema. We can evolve the schema. So we are looking at how we can add schema support to Redis. Redis doesn't have it, right? It's just effectively a map of strings. But other systems do. So schemas are very important for data governance. Contracts, right? The data contracts between producers and consumers.
Hi there. Speed-wise, you obviously convert your SQL to the actual Redis API calls. So it's pretty quick then, is it?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I didn't do the live demo, because it bring down my Docker, basically, instance. But yeah, it's a lot faster than the devs have been saying. It is a lot faster than Kafka. So if you're doing a filtering on, say, certain timestamps, you know, we're going to push that predicate down and we're going to tell Redis to stream the data back to it. So it's as fast as the client can then accept the data that we're pushing to. Like Akka streams is pretty fast. You know, in fact, it's very, very fast. But if you start querying for something in the message that's not part of the key, yeah, we've potentially got to read everything, filter it out, and give you it. We are working on that, you know, behind the scenes. But yeah, so we go as fast as the underlying system would allow, especially if you're querying on the something like the key.
Okay, and the redaction stuff for credit cards, is that built in, or do you have...
It's built in part of lenses, so we do it in the UI on the presentation layer, so we're not touching any of the data underneath. So if you come through us, then you get the redaction plus all the auditing and the data governance around it as well. So also you get a lot of things like topic blacklisting as well. So you get multi-tenancy for free then on top of the underlying system.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.